Please make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. They say funerals bring out the best in people, but in my family, it brought out the wolves. The air inside the lawyer's office was heavy, not just with the scent of polished mahogany and old paper, but with unspoken tension. I sat in the stiff leather chair, my hands clenched in my lap, trying to steady the pounding in my chest. My father had been gone barely 2 weeks, and already, I could feel the vultures circling. My stepmother, Vivian, sat across from me, her diamond bracelet catching the afternoon light in a way that felt almost mocking. She had a smirk painted across her face, the kind that told me she was savoring something she hadn't yet revealed. And then she did. In a voice sweet enough to curdle milk, she leaned toward me and said, "Oh, by the way, dear, you're being cut from the will. Entirely. Daddy's money is staying in the family." The lawyer, an older man with a calm but knowing expression, cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses. "Shall we begin?" he said. At that moment, I realized 2 things. 1, Vivian wasn't the family, and 2, my father hadn't raised me to be silent when someone tried to erase me. The click of the lawyer's pen was the only sound in the room as he opened the thick, cream-colored envelope. My eyes darted between the papers and Vivian's smug expression. I could almost hear her thoughts, how she believed she had outsmarted me, how she was finally pushing me out for good. But my father, he was a man who played the long game. The lawyer began to read, his voice even and deliberate. "This is the last will and testament of Charles Hamilton." Hearing his name made my throat tighten, but I straightened my back. I wasn't going to let her see me crack. Vivian was practically leaning forward, expecting to hear her name showered in assets and properties. But then, the lawyer paused, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Before I detail the distribution of the estate," he said, "Mr. Hamilton has included a message." Vivian's smirk faltered. My pulse quickened. I had no idea what was coming, but something told me, whatever it was, my father had saved it for this exact moment. And that was when the real game began. The lawyer unfolded a smaller, sealed note tucked inside the will. The paper crackled as he carefully opened it, his eyes scanning the contents before clearing his throat. "This is a personal message from Mr. Hamilton, to be read aloud at the time of the will's execution." I leaned forward, every nerve in my body alert. Vivian crossed her legs, her diamond heel tapping impatiently against the floor. She looked confident, too confident. The lawyer began. "To my beloved daughter, Charity." Vivian's head snapped toward me, her eyes narrowing. "I know you have doubted where you stand in this family. I regret that my health did not allow for us to have all the conversations we should have had. But I want you to know, I have always trusted you, not just with my love, but with my legacy." I felt my throat tighten. My father's voice seemed to echo through the room, each word pulling at the walls Vivian had spent years building between us. The lawyer continued. "As for Vivian, I thank you for your companionship these past years. However, my estate will be divided in accordance with truth, loyalty, and merit, not manipulation." I watched Vivian's perfectly lined lips part slightly, as if she'd just been slapped. The lawyer then read the part Vivian had been waiting for, and dreading without knowing it. "To my daughter Charity, I leave controlling interest in Hamilton Industries, all properties held under my name, and the contents of my private safe at the Shoreline Bank. To Vivian, I leave the lake house in Vermont and a monetary sum I have deemed sufficient for comfort." Vivian's heel stopped tapping. Her face drained of color. She knew the lake house was worth a fraction of my father's main holdings, and sufficient for comfort was legal code for barely enough to live on without working. But the blow wasn't over. The lawyer looked up at her. "Mrs. Hamilton, there's an additional stipulation regarding the lake house." He flipped the page, eyes scanning again. "It cannot be sold. It must remain in the family for at least 25 years, or it reverts back to Miss Charity Hamilton." That was it, the checkmate. I didn't have to say a word. The silence in the room was deafening. My father had made sure she couldn't cash out, couldn't twist her way into liquidating assets. He had given her a gilded cage. Vivian sat back, her jaw tight, but her eyes, they burned with pure hatred. And I knew, this was only the beginning. The meeting ended with the sound of papers shuffling, chairs scraping against the polished hardwood floor, and Vivian storming out without saying a word. I stayed behind. My father's lawyer, Mr. Garrison, leaned toward me, lowering his voice. "There's something else, Charity. Something your father asked me to tell you only when the others had left." My pulse quickened. "What is it?" He reached into his leather briefcase and pulled out a small velvet pouch. Inside was a single brass key, worn and cold to the touch. "This," he said, "is not for the Shoreline Bank safe everyone knows about. It's for another safe, one your father kept off all official records. Only you and I know it exists." I swallowed hard. "What's in it?" He shook his head. "I've never looked. But he said its contents would explain everything and that you'd understand why certain people in this family should never know about it." A chill ran down my spine. My father wasn't a man who believed in dramatics. If he had hidden something, it wasn't for sentiment. It was because it was dangerous. Garrison slid a folded piece of paper across the table. On it was an address in an industrial part of town I had never been to before. "The safe is here. It's in the back room of a storage facility. Go alone. And Charity, be careful." I left the lawyer's office with the key heavy in my palm. The city outside seemed louder, harsher. Vivian's black SUV was parked across the street. I caught a glimpse of her in the driver's seat, staring at me. When our eyes met, she didn't look away. She knew I had something. And I knew, if she found out about the second safe before I got there, my father's last secret might die with me. The address Mr. Garrison gave me led to an old brick building tucked between a mechanic's shop and a boarded-up diner. The sign above the door read Harbor Storage, its paint peeling like it had been there since the 70s. Inside, the air smelled faintly of motor oil and dust. A heavy-set man at the counter glanced up from his newspaper. "You Charity?" he asked, his voice gruff but curious. "Yes," I replied, gripping the brass key in my coat pocket. Without another word, he slid a clipboard toward me, and I signed without reading the fine print. He pointed down a dim hallway lined with metal doors. "Unit 47. End of the row." The corridor felt too quiet, each step echoing against the concrete floor. My fingers trembled as I fit the key into the lock. It turned with a satisfying click. The room beyond was bare except for a steel cabinet bolted into the back wall. Another lock, this one combination-based, guarded it. That's when I noticed a small envelope taped to the inside of the storage unit door, my name scrawled across it in my father's handwriting. I tore it open. Inside was a slip of paper, the 10th of April 62. His birthday. The dial clicked as I entered the numbers, and the cabinet door swung open. Inside were stacks of manila folders, bound bundles of cash, and, most striking, a thick leather notebook with my father's initials embossed in gold. I reached for the notebook, flipping it open, and froze. Page after page contained names, dates, and transactions, millions of dollars worth, paid to shell companies and hidden accounts. Some of their names I recognized instantly. Prominent business owners. Judges. Even a senator. My father had kept detailed records of an entire network of corruption. A sudden noise behind me made my blood run cold. Footsteps. I turned, and saw Vivian standing in the doorway, her lips curling into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Well," she said softly, "it looks like Daddy left you more than I thought." Vivian stepped inside, her heels clicking on the concrete floor. The dim light caught the sparkle of her diamond earrings, paid for, I realized, with some of the money in these files. How did you find me?" I managed to ask, my voice unsteady. She tilted her head, feigning innocence. "Oh, sweet Charity, did you really think I wouldn't notice you leaving the lawyer's office with an address you didn't share? My driver followed you. I had to see for myself what little secret Daddy left behind." She glanced at the stacks of cash, then at the notebook in my hands. "That belongs to me." I clutched it tighter. "This isn't yours. And if half of what's in here is true, a lot of people are going to prison." Her smile hardened into something sharp. "And where will that leave you, dear? You think they'll treat you like some hero? No. You'll just be the daughter who brought her own father's name through the mud." My heart pounded. She was right about one thing. This notebook could destroy reputations, but it could also destroy my father's memory. Vivian took a step closer, lowering her voice. "Give it to me now, and I'll make sure you get a generous allowance. Enough to keep you comfortable. But if you walk out with that book, you'll be making enemies you can't even imagine." The air between us was thick, heavy with unspoken threats. I looked down at the notebook, then back up at her. "You're afraid," I said quietly. She blinked, her composure flickering for a moment. "You know this is bigger than you," I continued. "And if my father didn't trust you with it, there's a reason." Vivian's face tightened. "You have no idea what you're getting into." I stepped past her toward the door, the notebook still in my grip. She didn't stop me, but her final words followed me out like a shadow. "You've just made the biggest mistake of your life, Charity. And when it comes for you, remember, I gave you a choice." I didn't sleep that night. The notebook sat on the small kitchen table of my apartment like it was alive, pulsing with the weight of what it contained. My hands shook as I flipped through the pages again, careful, slow, as though the ink might burn me if I turned too fast. Each page was a meticulous ledger in my father's handwriting, the neat cursive looping over dates, sums, and names. At first, I didn't recognize them all, but then certain ones began to stand out like flashing warning signs. 2 senators. A high-ranking police commissioner. A bank CEO. 3 real estate tycoons, people I'd seen smiling in magazines, shaking hands at charity events. And beside each name, payments. Not small amounts, millions. Bribes for contracts. Hush money for scandals. Payoffs to bury investigations. My stomach turned. This wasn't just my father's empire. This was a web of corruption that reached into nearly every corner of the city's power structure. One page, however, froze me completely. It had my name. Next to it, a figure, $1.2 million. The note read simply, "Trust account, activated upon death. Keep her safe." I swallowed hard. My father had protected me, but by writing my name in this ledger, he had also painted a target on my back. A sharp knock rattled my apartment door. I froze. Another knock, firmer this time. Charity. It's Detective Harrison. Open up, we need to talk. The last time I saw Detective Harrison was at my father's funeral. He had been polite, almost distant. But now, there was something urgent in his tone. I glanced at the notebook, then at the door. If I opened it, I'd have to choose, trust the law with this, or keep it hidden until I understood the full game. But before I could decide, a voice hissed from outside the window at the fire escape. Don't open that door, Charity. They're not here to help you. It was a man's voice. Low. Calm. And terrifyingly certain. The cold night air cut into my skin as I froze, staring at the shadowed figure crouched on the fire escape. I couldn't see his face, only the outline of a man in a dark coat, his breath clouding in the dim light. Who are you? I whispered. My voice trembled, but I forced the question out. He tilted his head slightly. A friend of your father's. And if you value your life, you'll step away from that door, now. Another knock, louder this time, made the walls vibrate. Charity. Detective Harrison barked. This is important. I took a step back, my heart pounding in my ears. Why shouldn't I trust him? I demanded in a whisper. The stranger's voice was steady, deliberate. Because Harrison works for one of the names in that book you're holding. The minute you open that door, you won't leave this building alive. My grip on the notebook tightened instinctively. How do you know about this? I hissed. The man on the fire escape leaned closer, his eyes catching the faint light. Because your father told me about it, the night before he died. My breath caught. If that was true, then this man had been one of the last people to see my father alive. The pounding at the door turned into full-on banging. Open the door now, Charity. Harrison's voice was no longer just urgent, it was sharp, commanding. The stranger glanced toward the noise, then back at me. You have 30 seconds to decide. If you want answers, real answers, come with me. If you want to believe in fairy tales, open that door. For a split second, I imagined what would happen if I stayed, how Harrison's calm police voice might turn cold, how the notebook might vanish into evidence that never saw daylight, how my father's story might die in a locked filing cabinet. My father's voice echoed in my head from years ago. If you ever find yourself surrounded, Charity, choose the road no one expects you to take. I made my choice. I grabbed my coat, slid the notebook into my bag, and climbed out the window into the cold night air, just as Harrison slammed his shoulder into my apartment door. The metal of the fire escape was freezing against my hands, but adrenaline kept me moving. The stranger led me down 2 levels before stopping in the shadows. Quick, he said, glancing up. Above us, my apartment door crashed open, and Harrison's heavy footsteps echoed inside. I swallowed hard. If I had hesitated even 5 more seconds, I'd be in that apartment, with him. We reached the alley. He didn't say a word, just motioned for me to follow. My instincts screamed at me to run the other way, but my curiosity was louder. We ducked into a dimly lit parking garage. He stopped beside a plain black sedan, unlocked the passenger door, and looked at me. You can still walk away. But if you get in this car, there's no going back. I studied his face for the first time, sharp features, late 40s maybe, eyes that had seen too much. Something about the way he looked at me wasn't threatening, it was calculating, like he was weighing whether I was worth the risk. I need to know the truth, I said finally. He nodded once. Then get in. I slid into the seat, the leather cold against my palms. As soon as he started the engine, he drove without headlights for 2 blocks before merging into traffic. "Who are you?" I demanded. "My name's Matthew," he said, eyes on the road. "I worked with your father for 17 years. We weren't just colleagues, we were partners." "Partners in what?" "In uncovering corruption, the kind that doesn't just ruin careers, it ends lives." I blinked. "And this has something to do with the notebook?" Matthew's jaw tightened. "That notebook is the last piece of evidence your father collected. If it falls into the wrong hands, every name in it will be untouchable forever. Including the one man your father was going to expose next." I leaned closer. "Who?" He looked at me for the first time since we got in the car. "Detective Harrison." The breath left my lungs. Matthew continued, "Your father found proof Harrison has been taking bribes for years, burying cases, and eliminating anyone who got too close. When your dad told me, he said if anything happened to him, I had to find you, and make sure you got out alive." The city lights flickered across Matthew's face as we drove deeper into the night. "You've been living in a nest of vipers, Charity," he said quietly. "And they know you have the venom." Matthew's words rattled around my head like loose bullets. "Detective Harrison. The man who had helped me after Dad died. The man who showed up at my apartment with groceries, who promised to keep me safe. The same man who had been watching me like a hawk ever since I found the notebook." My stomach churned. If Matthew was telling the truth, I'd been trusting the wolf while sleeping in his den. We drove until the city lights thinned out, replaced by dark stretches of empty road. Matthew kept glancing in the rearview mirror. "They're tailing us," he muttered. "Black SUV, 2 cars back. Been there since we left the garage." My pulse quickened. "What do we do?" Matthew's grip tightened on the wheel. "We can't lead them to where we're going." "Hold on." The tires screeched as he took a hard right onto a narrow dirt road. The SUV followed, its headlights bouncing violently over the uneven terrain. Matthew pushed the sedan harder, the trees blurring on either side. "They won't risk gunfire on a road this tight," Matthew said, but I could hear the strain in his voice. Then, sudden darkness. Matthew cut the headlights and killed the engine, coasting us behind a cluster of thick pines. We sat in the black silence, listening. The SUV roared past moments later, its lights slicing through the woods before disappearing into the distance. I exhaled slowly, but Matthew's expression didn't relax. "They'll double back. We've got maybe 5 minutes before they realize we vanished." He reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a small metal case. Inside was a key, old, heavy, with intricate engravings along the bow. "Your father told me this opens a safe deposit box in a bank downtown," Matthew said. "Everything, every file, every recording, every photo, is inside. And they'll do anything to stop you from seeing it." My hands trembled as I took the key. "What happens when I open it?" I whispered. Matthew looked at me with a grim finality. "Then, Charity, you'll understand exactly why your father died, and why you might be next." Somewhere in the distance, an engine roared again, this time closer. Matthew started the car. "Buckle up. We're out of time." The city was just waking when we reached the downtown district. The sky was a dull grey, the kind of color that promised rain but held it back just long enough to keep everyone uneasy. Matthew parked 2 blocks away from the bank. "We go on foot from here," he said. "Less chance they'll spot us pulling in." I tucked the heavy key deep into my pocket. Every step toward the bank made it feel heavier, as if it knew exactly how much power it held, and how much danger came with it. The glass doors slid open with a faint hiss as we stepped inside. It was too quiet for a Monday morning. No lines at the teller windows. No hum of chatter. Just the low buzz of fluorescent lights and the faint echo of our footsteps on the polished floor. A woman in a navy suit appeared from behind the counter. "Good morning," she said with a warm smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "How can I help you?" Matthew answered before I could. "We're here for a safe deposit box. Number 317. Her smile flickered for the briefest moment. "Of course. This way." She led us down a narrow hallway toward the vault room. The air grew colder with each step. I glanced back toward the main lobby and noticed something that made my stomach clench. A man in a black coat had just entered, and he wasn't headed toward the tellers. He was watching us. We stepped into the vault room, and the woman gestured toward a small table. "I'll bring the box to you." As she disappeared through the vault door, Matthew leaned in close. "She's stalling. Someone tipped them off we were coming." Before I could respond, the vault door opened again. But it wasn't the woman who stepped out. It was Detective Harrison. His smile was slow, deliberate, and chilling. "Well," he said, his voice dripping with false warmth, "you made it. I was hoping you would." Matthew shifted slightly, placing himself between Harrison and me. "What do you want?" Matthew asked. Harrison's eyes locked on me. "Just to make sure you never open that box." Behind him, 2 more men stepped into the vault room, blocking the exit. And for the first time since Dad's funeral, I realized there might be no walking away from this. The walls of the vault room seemed to close in, the air thick with tension. Matthew's stance shifted, shoulders squared, jaw tight, ready for whatever was about to happen. Harrison took a slow step toward me. "That key," he said, his eyes never leaving mine, "will ruin people you don't even know exist. Put it on the table, and you walk out of here alive." My hand tightened around it in my pocket. My father's voice echoed in my memory. "If you're hearing this, it means they've tried to take everything from you. Don't let them." I forced my voice to steady. "You'll have to kill me first." Harrison smirked, tilting his head. "That can be arranged." The woman in the navy suit reappeared, holding the safe deposit box in both hands. Her eyes darted between us, a flicker of confusion and fear passing over her face. "I was told to give this directly to her." She extended it toward me. Matthew moved fast, snatching the box, sliding it across the table to me. "Open it," he said under his breath. The 2 men blocking the door stepped closer. Harrison's hand went into his jacket. My pulse was pounding so hard I could barely hear the metallic click as I turned the key in the lock. The lid creaked open. Inside was a thick leather envelope, sealed with red wax, and underneath it, stacks of old photographs. Not just any photographs, photographs of Harrison, younger but still recognizable, sitting at a table with politicians, corporate CEOs, and one man I never thought I'd see, my father. The photographs weren't smiles and handshakes, they were evidence. Meetings in secret, handoffs of thick envelopes, men shaking hands over documents that had fraud written all over them. And then, tucked into the bottom, a small USB drive with a handwritten label, the insurance policy. Harrison saw it. His smirk vanished. "Give that to me," he growled, taking a step forward. Matthew pulled a small pistol from his jacket, quiet, controlled, deadly calm. "I think we're done here," he said. The room erupted, Harrison lunging, the men moving in, but Matthew's gun didn't waver. The woman in the navy suit backed toward the wall, trembling. I clutched the USB in one hand and the envelope in the other. Whatever this was, it was worth my father's life. And now, it might cost mine. The moment Matthew said, "We're done here," the room exploded into chaos. Harrison lunged first, shoving the table toward me. Matthew fired, a sharp, deafening crack that sent everyone diving for cover. The bullet splintered the wood inches from Harrison's hand, forcing him back. "Move!" Matthew barked, grabbing my arm. We bolted for the door, but one of Harrison's men blocked the exit, swinging a fist at Matthew. The blow missed by a hair. Matthew countered with a jab to the ribs and a brutal elbow to the jaw. The man dropped. The hallway outside echoed with pounding footsteps, security converging. Matthew shoved the USB drive into my coat pocket. "Whatever happens, don't let go of this." We sprinted toward the service stairs, the shouts growing louder. Harrison's voice roared behind us. "Don't let her leave this building alive." The stairwell door slammed open, and we hurtled down, 2 steps at a time. My pulse thundered in my ears. Matthew was ahead of me, his pistol raised, scanning every landing. We burst out into the parking garage, dark, cold, smelling of gasoline. A black SUV screeched around the corner, headlights blinding us. Matthew fired once at the grille, the SUV swerved, tires screaming, before smashing into a concrete pillar. We darted between parked cars, trying to reach the exit ramp. Footsteps pounded behind us again. Harrison's men weren't giving up. Then Matthew's hand gripped my shoulder and shoved me hard toward a side door. "This way, loading dock." We pushed through, emerging into the bitter night air. Snow flurries whipped past my face. Matthew's car was already idling, hidden behind a delivery truck. I barely made it inside before he hit the gas. The tires screeched, and we shot out onto the street, weaving between traffic. "Where are we going?" I asked, still gripping the USB so tightly my knuckles hurt. "Somewhere they can't follow," Matthew said. His jaw was set, his eyes locked on the road. "And then, we find out what your father died for." As the city lights blurred past, I felt the weight of the little drive in my pocket. I didn't know exactly what it contained, but I knew it was powerful enough to make dangerous men desperate. And desperate men were willing to kill. Matthew didn't stop until the city skyline was nothing but a faint glow in the distance. We pulled into an old, abandoned warehouse on the edge of the river. The wind howled through the broken windows, and the faint sound of water slapping against the dock echoed in the dark. He killed the engine, turned to me, and said, "Lock the doors." I did. My fingers were trembling, not from the cold, but from the anticipation gnawing at me. The USB drive in my pocket felt like it was burning through the fabric. Matthew retrieved an old laptop from the trunk and set it on the dusty hood of the car. No internet, no trackers. "We see what's on this, and then we decide our next move." He plugged it in. The screen flickered, then loaded a folder marked, "Confidential." Inside were hundreds of files, spreadsheets, scanned contracts, wire transfers. My breath caught when I saw the names. politicians, judges, CEOs. All tied together by a single company name, the one my father used to work for. Your dad, he was compiling this, Matthew said, scrolling through. This is proof of a black market network laundering billions, buying influence, controlling decisions in courtrooms, governments, even elections. I stared at the screen. Every name was someone untouchable. Someone the public would never suspect. And in the middle of it all, Harrison's name appeared. Next to my stepmother's. I felt my stomach twist. She's been involved, this whole time. Matthew opened another file, a recorded video. My father's voice filled the cold warehouse. If you're hearing this, it means I didn't make it. The people on this list will kill to protect themselves. But if you release this, it will destroy them all. Keep it safe, kiddo. My knees gave way, and I gripped the edge of the car to steady myself. The air felt heavier, like the truth itself was crushing me. Matthew closed the laptop. This is why they've been after you. I looked at him, my pulse still thundering. Then we hit them first. A slow, dangerous smile formed on his lips. That's what I was hoping you'd say. Outside, the wind howled like it was warning us. But it was too late, because we had just declared war. We drove back toward the city under cover of night, the USB drive locked in Matthew's glove compartment. The streets blurred past, but my mind was already building the plan, step by step, move by move. If my father's final message was a chess game, I was done playing defense. By dawn, we were in Matthew's safe house, a quiet apartment above a repair shop that smelled faintly of engine oil and burnt coffee. The blinds were drawn. The walls were bare. It was perfect. Matthew spread a map of the city on the table. We have one shot. Once they know the files are compromised, they'll burn every trail. I nodded. Then we make them come to us, thinking they're in control. We divided the operation into 3 parts. The bait, I'd pose as if I wanted to negotiate my silence. Using a burner phone, I'd contact my stepmother's lawyer, saying I knew about the laundering scheme and was willing to sell the evidence for cash. The meeting, Matthew would secure an empty luxury penthouse in the same building they once tried to evict my father from. Hidden cameras and audio recorders would be planted everywhere. The trap would transmit the meeting live to a secure server and to every major news outlet simultaneously. The moment they made their threats, or admitted guilt, it would be out in the open. 2 days later, the bait was set. The reply came faster than I expected. A single text from an unknown number. Meet alone. Tomorrow. 9 p.m. The address was the penthouse we'd chosen, proof they thought they were in control. The next evening, I walked into that building in a black coat and heels, just like the daughter of a desperate woman should look. Matthew, hidden in the service elevator, watched everything through the hidden feeds. When the door opened, my stepmother was there, dressed in sharp ivory silk. Behind her were 2 men in suits, Harrison among them. Her smile was venom. You've grown bold, child. Name your price and maybe you'll walk out of here. I took a slow step inside, my voice steady. Price? Oh, I'm not here to sell. I'm here to deliver. Harrison frowned. Deliver what? I tilted my head toward the ceiling. Your confession, to every screen in the country. It took them a second, just long enough for Matthew to press the broadcast trigger. A tiny red light blinked on every hidden camera. My stepmother's face drained of color as her own voice echoed back from Matthew's speakers, already live streaming. Get rid of her before she exposes the list. I don't care what you have to do. The men lunged for me, but Matthew burst through the service door, armed with nothing but a stun baton and unshakable timing. Within minutes, the room was chaos, shouting, scrambling, doors slamming. And then, outside, sirens wailed. The police didn't come because we called. They came because millions of viewers had already seen enough to demand it. As they dragged my stepmother and Harrison away, she shot me a look I'll never forget. A mix of hate and disbelief. Like she still couldn't understand how the girl she tried to erase had just erased her. The headlines exploded before dawn. Socialite stepmother arrested in live-streamed corporate scandal. Heiress outsmarts crime syndicate with broadcast sting. Inheritance battle unmasks $500 million laundering scheme. By breakfast, my name was everywhere. Not as the ungrateful stepdaughter she once painted me to be, but as the woman who brought down an empire built on stolen money. The police confiscated the hard drives Matthew and I had uncovered. The files from my father's safe were now in the hands of federal investigators. Every shell company, every offshore account, every falsified contract, they all pointed to my stepmother, Harrison, and a network of accomplices. The trial was fast-tracked. The DA made it clear, my father's fortune would be frozen until the court determined rightful ownership. 2 weeks later, I walked into the same law office where she once tried to cut me from the wool. This time, there was no smug lawyer beside her, no champagne on the desk. Just me, the executor of the estate, and a signed court order. The lawyer's voice was steady as he read aloud. In accordance with the late Mr. Whitlock's final testament, all remaining assets, properties, and accounts are to be transferred to his biological daughter. My stepmother, in handcuffs, sat in the corner, staring at the floor. She didn't speak. Didn't even blink. The keys to every house, car, and safe deposit box were slid across the table toward me. I picked them up slowly, the metal cold in my hand. For a moment, I thought about all the years she'd tried to erase me. All the times she'd smiled while dismantling my father's legacy. And then I thought about the one thing she'd never understood. My father didn't just leave me money. He left me the truth. 3 months later, I stood in the garden of my childhood home. The same home she once threatened to sell. The fountain was running again. The roses had been replanted. Matthew handed me a small wooden box. Inside was my father's old pocket watch, engraved with words I'd never noticed before. For my daughter, who will always finish the game. And I had. It arrived on a rainy Tuesday. A small, cream-colored envelope with my name written in my father's handwriting, delivered by a courier who said it had been locked away in a private safe until the court cleared my inheritance. I sat at my desk, staring at it for a long time before finally breaking the seal. Inside was a single page. The paper smelled faintly of cedar, like his old study. My dearest Charity, if you are reading this, then the storm has passed, and the truth is finally yours. I knew the day would come when others would try to take what I built. But I also knew they would underestimate you. You are not just my heir, you are my safeguard. I've left you something no one else knows about. In the roots of the old oak tree by the west wall, you'll find a black lockbox. Inside is the deed to a vineyard in Italy, purchased under your name when you were 5. It's where I planned for you to start fresh, if you ever needed to. Live well, and remember, Finishing the game doesn't always mean winning the way they expect. Sometimes it means building something new entirely. Dad. Asterisk. I read the letter 3 times, the ink blurring through my tears. The West Wall oak had been there since before I was born. I could picture it clearly, its roots tangled and deep, hiding something just for me. For the first time since his death, I didn't just feel victorious. I felt free. And as I folded the letter back into its envelope, I realized my stepmother had fought so hard to take my father's money. But the real treasure had never been in the will. It had been waiting, quietly, under the roots of an old oak tree.